Colorado played well against UCLA on defense, but the offense couldn't hang, and they ended up losing their second straight game. I'm going to talk about what went wrong and more on today's episode of Locked On Buffs.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? This is Locked On Buffs. I am Kevin Borber, your host. Every episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every single day for free wherever you get your podcasts. This episode is also brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. It's daily fantasy sports made easy. Okay, as you guys probably know, the Colorado Buffaloes ended up losing their matchup yesterday against the number 23 UCLA Bruins. I'm going to talk about my biggest takeaways, what needs to change moving forward, and then the final stretch of Colorado season, because I still think that they kind of have they can control their own destiny. It's just not going to be as easy. They really needed that Stanford win. They really could have used a stronger performance yesterday. So takeaways. This one is not a bold take by any means. I'm not reinventing the wheel right here. But again, I think this has been a takeaway pretty much every week of mine as well. So it's going to seem redundant, but until it's fixed, it's going to be a major takeaway. The offensive line is horrendous, and this team cannot do anything with them. Coach Prime himself, after the game, said he was asked about the big picture and protecting Shedeur Sanders, and he said, the big picture, you go get new linemen. That's the picture, and I'm going to paint it perfectly. If you guys didn't know this or haven't been following along, Colorado's offensive line is probably the worst unit in the country. They gave up 7 sacks yesterday. Shedeur Sanders is one of the most sacked quarterbacks in the country, which is unfortunate, because I think it really limits what he could do overall. And I think we saw that to a T yesterday. Colorado's defense, I had 3 keys coming into this game. My first key was force UCLA to turn the ball over. They did that, and they did that in a major way. Like, I don't know if Colorado's defense had an impact like they had yesterday. They had 2 interceptions and then 2 forced fumbles. So they had 4 turnovers forced, which is great. That was my first key. Force UCLA to turn the ball over. Don't give them extra possessions, which leads me to my second key. Don't turn the ball over if you're Colorado. Colorado didn't turn the ball over, but what they did struggle with was the offense. Like I said, Shedeur Sanders sacked 7 times. The rushing attack, again, useless, 38 yards, 1.6 yards per carry, counting Shedeur's stats. Even then, Sevion Wilkerson had 2 carries for 5.5 yards, and he was Alton Caskell, 2 carries for 14 yards, average of 7 yards a carry, most effective running back for Colorado. It's not going to get it done, I think. And they talked about it religiously on the broadcast. Kirk Herbstreit said it multiple times. The reason that Colorado's offense it's almost one-dimensional way, because they get to the red zone, for example, and defenses know they're not going to run the ball. There is no running the ball. There is no, okay, we're going to run the ball a couple times and then we'll pass. It's literally like, if they run the ball, they're just burning a play. That's one less play. That's one less time Shedeur Sanders could take a hit, because he was taking hits all game. I think yesterday was the first time this season, maybe outside of the Oregon game, where Shedeur Sanders looked physically tired or beat up. Like, he was slow to get up pretty much every hit. He was not scrambling as much. It seemed like he was almost reluctant to take off, because obviously UCLA's pass rush, they have NFL guys on there. Like, that is a elite pass rush. They have the Murphy brothers, or the Murphy twins, and then they have Latu, who is obviously a monster in his own right. And those guys were tearing it up. Like, those 3 guys alone. Let's see. One of the Murphy twins, they both had 1.5 sacks, and then Latu had 2 sacks. Like, those guys alone were making life miserable for Shedeur Sanders. And then they kind of took away, which I think is the underrated portion of UCLA's defense. Their secondary is pretty solid. I wouldn't say it's the best secondary by any means, but secondary is pretty good. And they took away kind of the deep ball. There was no deep shots for Colorado up until that last quarter, when Shedeur hit, I think it was Xavier Weaver, down the sideline. Their longest pass, was 18 yards. And that was Jimmy Horn Jr. And there just wasn't big plays available for Colorado. And I think they're a big play dependent team. And so, like I said, when my biggest key was forced turnovers, and it'll give this offense more possessions, not a thought in my head. Like, I was like, does UCLA have a really good defense? I was like, yeah, they do, but it's Shedeur Sanders. It's this offense. They're going to figure something out, and they just weren't able to figure anything out. And I think that was the hard part of the whole situation. And it kind of, that offensive line struggling, the defensive line struggling as well to stop the run. I think they forcing the fumbles were huge, but if you look at UCLA's stats, they still ran for 269 yards, on averaging, or excuse me, that was receiving. They ran for 218 yards and 2 scores. And so not the best showing, but Travis Hunter had 2 great picks. They had Shiloh Sanders forced a clutch fumble, and then they had, I forgot how the other fumble was, similar hit on the running back, and they were getting these opportunities for the offense. The offense just wasn't able to do anything, and it's kind of been the other way around all season, where it's like the offense will score, but the defense can't hold up their end of the bargain. And so Colorado drops another one. They are now 4-4 on the year. Final score, I think, is a little closer than the game actually was, 28-16. It was really up until Colorado got a garbage time timeout, essentially, to make it that close. So, but for the most part, it wasn't close at all, really. I think we kind of saw the flaws that this Colorado team has. They weren't able to build off their lead in the first quarter. They went up 6-0. If those drives turn into touchdowns and it's 14-0, it's a whole different game. I think UCLA really was struggling to find their identity, and it helped that Colorado was struggling to figure things out on offense. And there's not really an answer for how to fix this offense until you get new linemen in. And Coach Prime, while I think the transfer portal is a great tool, I just don't know how the offensive line is going to be rebuilt through the portal. It'll be interesting, to say the least, because I'm looking at the transfer portal this past year, and this is just the top ranked players. So obviously Travis Hunter's number 1, and then Denver Harris 2, a corner. Adonai Mitchell from Georgia to Texas is number 3. And then you have to scroll all the way down. I'm scrolling all the way down to number 10 is Javion Cohen, who went from Alabama to Miami. He's the only top 10 offense lineman. And then there's Avery Jones from Eastern Carolina to Auburn. And then you keep going. Another one, Ladarius Henderson to Michigan. And Matt Lee, UCF Miami. So that's 4. Dylan Wade, Tulsa, Auburn. And that's it. So there's 5 guys in the top 30 that were top offensive linemen. Of those programs, Michigan is the only, I don't know which one of those guys is starting. I honestly don't. But of those 5 guys, they're all, Auburn's a losing team, and a SEC team, obviously. So that's kind of Miami's a team that's solid but not great. And I forgot where the other one went, but like Michigan, Auburn, yep. So it's kind of like there's not, like, I guess what I'm saying is there's not 5 offensive linemen out there in the portal that are just going to come in and be like, okay, now we're ready. I think there's going to be 2 or 3. I think this is where recruiting comes into play for Colorado, and I think this is where it gets a little difficult for the Coach Prime's transfer portal method, because there's not transfers out there that can replace this offensive line. This offensive line is transfers outside of 2 players, and it's just not what it needs to be. And I'm not sure they're going to be able to find adequate replacements. Like, they're going to find guys that are probably quality players or SEC backups that need a chance to play, but there's not going to be I don't know who, like Joe Alt from Penn State. There's not going to be any Joe Alts in the transfer portal. That's just not how it works. Like, that's not, the offensive line is one of those things where, or excuse me, Joe Alt from Notre Dame. The offensive line is one of those positions where the best guys are playing, like, and they don't typically leave. Like, wide receivers, you'll see guys like Xavier Weaver and Jimmy Horn, great wide receivers. They chose to stay at their school, and then they chose to leave for better opportunity after, obviously, things didn't go well at USF. Same thing, let's see, Tavares Dawson didn't play a lot at Auburn, comes to Colorado, gets bigger opportunities. Omarion Cooper, the corner from Florida State, he didn't play. He was a starter at one point, ended up losing his role. Like, that's the type of guy you're getting in the transfer portal. It's very rare where it's like, okay, this guy is a bona fide star and wants to transfer. That's usually NIL stuff, and that's usually where programs like USC or Texas or elsewhere come into play. And so it'll be interesting to see how Colorado tries to fix this offense line problem, because I don't think until they do fix it, they're going to continue to struggle, and it's going to continue to kind of be like an ugly the ugly side of Colorado football. It was like, oh, they'll be good eventually, but it's just they got to get bigger in the trenches, and getting bigger in the trenches is easier said than done. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at Athletic Brewing Company. Now it's time for my game changer of the week, brought to you by Athletic Brewing Company. Much like Travis Hunter, who had an amazing 2 picks on defense, Athletic Brewing has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good. Athletic Brewing Company has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game, so much so that their drinks taste good, they're full flavor, and well-crafted, just like a full-strength brew. They brew over 50 styles of craft non-alcoholic beers, including IPAs, golden, sours, and more. And the best part, you go on their website, you can take the quiz and find the perfect flavor for you. I'm not a big beer drinker, but I went on there, kind of put in what kind of drinks I enjoy, found the perfect flavor for me, and I love it. It's fit for all times. That's the best part. You could drink them while you're watching a big game, or maybe your kid's game, or you're at work or working out. Either way, the best part is there's no hangovers. No hangovers whatsoever. You can find them on store or in store, online, and in bars around the country. So you can find Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you, or buy online at athleticbrewing.com. First-time customers use code LOCKEDON to get 15% off your first online order. That's code LOCKEDON at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer, exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. This episode of Locked On Buffs is also brought to you by our sponsor over at eBay Motors. Let me tell you a little bit about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. We are back, and we're talking about changes that I think need to be made. These changes are long overdue, and it's kind of one of those things where we're hitting the final stretch of the season. I don't know why these changes weren't made already, but there's 2 that stand out. I think one, and I like the change. I'm going to talk about a change that I like. Trevor Woods at linebacker was a difference maker. If you guys didn't know this already, Juwan Mitchell is essentially, we'll just say, not in the picture right now for Colorado. He's been dealing with some off the field issues based on what Coach Prime has said. And it's kind of like it's been an ongoing thing with him, I guess you could say. It happened at Texas. He didn't last at Tennessee, and then he was kicked out of the Arizona State program after a week. So this was kind of always Juwan Mitchell's issue. He started his career at JUCO. He's just always had issues putting everything together and kind of being, I guess, where he needs to be in terms of being a college football player. Anyway, Trevor Woods comes in, starts at linebacker, which I like. I think that's a great change for the defense. Another sound tackler on the field. He led the team in tackles with 12. And then it also gives guys like Roderick Ward and Shiloh Sanders and Cameron Summer-Craig, it gives them more reps and more opportunities to kind of get in there and make some plays, because I think the more guys that you have on defense that can tackle, the better, because when teams are trying to run it down your throat or are trying to kill you in the crossing game and you just can't bring people down, that's where it hurts you. And so Trevor Woods, I like that change at linebacker. So that's the first change I wanted to discuss. Second change comes offensively. I think we all, whether we want to admit it or not, we have to accept that this team is not going to run the ball. Like, it's just not in the cards for them. It's just, they had a total of 24 rushes. 13 of them came from Shadur, so 11 total from running backs. Excuse me. Alton McCaskill had 2. Dylan Edwards had 4. Wilkerson 2, and then Hankerson 3. Their leading rusher had 14 yards on 7 yards of carry. Dylan Edwards had 4 carries for 12 yards. Wilkerson had 2 for 11, and Hankerson had 3 for 8. I think Colorado needs to change their offensive personnel to help this offensive line. Kirk Herbstreit was talking about it, and Sean Lewis's offense doesn't really predicate themselves on using a tight end. Well, I don't care about what the offense normally looks like. Get a tight end out there. Get a tight end out there, please. Like, Mikey Harrison or Mikey, yeah, Mikey Harrison had 1 catch for 12 yards, 3 targets, and he's a great weapon. I think he'll kind of open up tight end positioning for Colorado moving forward. But if I'm Sean Lewis, I'm going with I don't know if you go out with the 21 personnel, but you at least need 1 tight end out there and a running back. And I would have them both the tight end and the running back. I'd have them on the blind side because that is clearly the weak side of the offensive line. And I would have them block pretty much every play. I know it limits the receivers. I know it limits the plays you could call an offense because you only have, let's see, that's 6, 7, 8. You're only having 3 receivers instead of 4, and it's like, we don't want to give that up. Well, it's like, you know what? Do you want to give that up, or do you want to have Shedeur Sanders getting hit and beat up every single play? So my ideal change to this offense moving forward is obviously 5 offensive linemen, maybe even 6. You could bring in a 6th offensive lineman as a tight end, have him put on their jersey as eligible, whatever, to adhere to the rule. But you bring in a tight end, you bring in a running back, that's 7. And then obviously you have Shedeur 8. So you have 3 receivers still. I mean, it limits the overall scheme of Sean Lewis's offense, but I think what limits this offense more is Shedeur Sanders being planted into the ground every single play. Like that's just not acceptable. And it's gonna I never want to talk about someone getting hurt if they haven't been hurt, but the offensive line at the rate Shedeur Sanders gets hurt or hit, he might get hurt. Like he's getting hit every single play. He got sacked a total of 7 times, like I said yesterday. They had 6 and 6 quarterback hurries. They were hitting them nonstop. It wasn't even, they weren't dirty hits. There was like 1 hit or 2 where it was like, that was a late hit and they got flagged for it. But that's kind of like one of those things where defensive linemen love to do that to quarterbacks. They love to just hit them. They love to sometimes. Max Crosby on the Raiders is a big proponent of this. He'll like run by a quarterback and just like, obviously the play's over and he just hits him with a little like gut punch, a little rib punch, or like a little tap, and it eventually wears on the quarterback. It eventually gets them off focus, and then that's when they start making mistakes. And so that's my other change. Bring in a tight end and a running back to block for Shedeur Sanders. This offense line cannot do it. I know it's not how Sean Lewis's offense is supposed to operate, but it really does you no good if your defense gives you 4 turnovers and you basically are only able to score 9 points. I'm not counting that last touchdown because it was garbage time. The game was over at that point. So you get 3 field goals off of, and you had 4 turnovers on the game. Like there was no points off turnovers. Literally Colorado had, that's insane to me that Travis Hunter has 2 massive interceptions. Shiloh Sanders forces a monster hit. I forgot who forced the other big hit, but it was another fumble. And it's like, okay, you're getting what should be one of the best offenses in the country, more opportunities, and they can't capitalize because Shedeur Sanders is on his back. Now, granted, UCLA is one of the best pass rushes in the country, but you know that going in, that isn't a surprise. So why are we treating UCLA as if they're like not, as if they don't have 3 NFL pass rushers on their defensive line? That is asinine to me. Get more guys blocking. The more the merrier. Like, I don't know if it helps, but having someone get chipped or having someone or even just having another body there to stand in the way while Shedeur Sanders gets 1 more second to throw. I think there was 2 plays that stand out to me. I think it was one of them was a run play to Hankerson. And then the other one was, I think it was a quick screen. First one to Hankerson that I'm talking about looked like a read option, kind of like a slow mesh look. And I think it was the nose tackle. I think it was one of the Murphy brothers. Quite literally shoved the center and I think maybe a guard into the lap of Shedeur Sanders before him or Hankerson could even pull the ball, or before he could pull the ball or hand it off to Hankerson. Like before they made it basically 2 yards from where they started, the defensive line was literally collapsed on them. And then there was, I think it was a quick bubble like screen or just like a quick screen to the sideline. Shedeur Sanders got hit. It was literally a catch and throw. There was no catch, like look through my progressions. It was a catch and throw, and Shedeur Sanders still got hit. Like that is how bad this offensive line is. They need to change that. That's like my biggest change. It's bad on offense, and it's bad for the offense in terms of confidence, and it's bad for just player safety. Like these guys are going to get someone hurt out here. And Coach Prime talked about needing to change it. He needs to change, or him and Sean Lewis need to have a discussion on changing the scheme because this isn't working. It only works when teams don't rush the passer well, and that's just not that's not like a good thing to hope for, I guess, moving forward. Like, oh, you know what? It's UCLA, so they have a good pass rush. So obviously we know they're gonna make a struggle. No, every team has at least one guy that could get to the quarterback. And against Colorado, it's like a free for all. So they need to change that. It is what it is. Yeah, it's definitely there was. Yep, there was that play. Sorry, I was reading a comment. It says there was literally a play where 3 offensive linemen just stood there confused and let Shedeur get hit. Yeah, it reminds me of, I don't know if you guys have seen what is that movie with Adam Sandler? Anyway, it's the one where he goes to jail. He's playing quarterback. His name is Paul Crew in the movie. I love that movie too. They're the Mean Machine, whatever. And he makes his offensive line mad, and they like let the pass rush through because they're mad at him. That's what it looks like for Shedeur Sanders, but they're trying their best, and it's unfortunately their best is not good enough, and so they need to figure something out. And I think those are the two biggest changes I appreciated was I would appreciate Trevor Wood staying at linebacker and then helping out this offense line because it is just god awful, and it's going to prevent Colorado from achieving what they hope to achieve this season. This episode of Locked on Buffs is also brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the most fun I've had, winning up to 25 times my money this football season. All you have to do, you select 2 or more players, you pick more or less on their projected stats, and you place your entry. Testing my skills on PrizePicks this football season is the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. If you have the skills, you could turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. PrizePicks is really simple to play. I can make my picks and submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. With PrizePicks reboot policy, your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For NFL games and college football top 25 matchups, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, the player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with injury insurance. Again, go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. It's daily fantasy sports made easy. Okay, we are looking ahead. We're looking into the future. I have my crystal ball. I'm playing the Swami role, I think as Chris Berman once said, or called his future predicting character. Colorado is currently sitting at 4-4. They have 4 games left, and they need to win 2 to make a bowl game. So you have 4 games to win 2. Obviously, beating Stanford would have helped. There would have been 4 games to win 1, but that's not the position they're in. So this week, homecoming for them. They play Oregon State. That's going to be a tough matchup. Oregon State could run the ball with the best of them. They have Deshaun Fenwick and Damian Martinez, maybe the best running back duo, in the country. It's top 5 at minimum. Very good running back duo. Does not bode well for Colorado, who just gave up. I think that was a quiet rush game for UCLA, and they still ran for 218 yards, 2 scores, and almost 5 yards a carry. So that's not great. Their defense is solid. They could get to the quarterback. And then, of course, they have Arizona, who is probably the hottest team in college football right now. They just beat Washington State last night. They just beat Oregon State last night. So not only are you getting a tough Oregon State team, but you're getting a mad Oregon State team because their playoff hopes just got dashed in a game that was played at like 11 p.m. Pacific. Like that game was so late. I was up watching it, but I was like exhausted by the time that game came around. So they have that game as well. So Arizona's a completely different team. They're also looking to make a bowl game. Then you have at Washington State. Washington State's beatable, but again, how does this Colorado team react? I think the biggest question I had about this team prior to the season was how they handled adversity. And right now they're in the middle of a 2-game losing streak that could easily extend to 3. And I just don't know what the makeup of this team is. I think morale is starting to get low, especially with Coach Prime talking about replacing players when there's 4 games left. And I completely understand why he's doing it. That offense line is terrible. But morale can't be high in that locker room. Morale has got to be getting lower and lower. And then after the hot Arizona team, and Washington State team, which playing at Pullman, 8:30 p.m. late game. Pullman's a freaky place. It's a Friday night game. Weird things happen. And then you have at Utah, who is one of the best teams in the Pac-12, even with all their injuries. They're physical. They could run the ball. Really good defense. They have the leading pass rusher in the country on their team in Jonah Ellis. So they have a lot going. Excuse me. They have a lot going for them. And they were literally let me just say, this Colorado team had a chance to make a bowl game. My record prediction prior to the season was 6-6. And now I'm looking at it, and right now, best case scenario for Colorado these next few games looks like 5-7, which, I mean, it's not a disappointment. I don't even think 4 wins is a disappointment if you're looking at this from a rational standpoint. If you're looking at this from the standpoint of Coach Prime said we're going to win right away, then yeah, it's a disappointment. I think if you're looking at it from a rational standpoint, it's like this team overachieved quickly. They beat up on teams like TCU, Nebraska, who might make a bowl game, by the way. Nebraska's turned it around. And then Colorado State. They beat up on those teams at the right time and got out to a hot start. And they just aren't able to keep up with the better teams in the Pac-12. And I think that's fair. Again, that's what happens when you bring in 50 new players. You bring 50 new transfers, over 80 players that are new. There's a lot of growing pains, and I would say there's a lot of growing pains to come. I think this is going to be a tough final stretch. I think my prediction at 6-6 is still in play, but right now it's looking like more of a 5-7, 5-7 instance. Yeah, Brooklyn in the comment section said the offensive line was so bad when they would run the ball through the middle. UCLA's defense ends would get off the line of scrimmage so fast. I thought in my head, are they offsides? Yeah, that's what it felt like, because it was like the ball snapped and all of a sudden Shadur Sanders has 5 guys just plowing him into the ground. Yeah, and there's some lack of confidence that Colorado could win another game. I totally agree. I think if they played up to their full potential, where the offense is clicking and the defense is like slowing down the other offense, they could win. This is if everybody's playing right. They could win out. Like, let me just put that out there. Like, if Colorado's playing at their best, they could at least win 3 or 4 of these next games. 3 out of the 4, maybe even 4 out of the 4. That's if they're playing a perfect game. They haven't played a perfect game all year. They've kind of benefited from other teams messing up. They start slow, and then they blow up in the second half. They flip a switch, and they just haven't been able to flip a switch lately, and that's what's been hurting them. So it's going to be interesting to see what continues happening. I do think they maybe win one more, but it's going to be a tough stretch the rest of the way. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Locked On Buffs. I'm Kevin Borber. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. We're nearing, I think, around 3,800 subscribers. I appreciate you guys, all your support that you give me along the way. I will see you guys on Monday through Friday and even Saturday after the games. Unless it's a late game, then I'll do Sunday mornings, and I'll have everything you need to know about the Colorado Buffaloes. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend. Go watch some NFL football and go enjoy your day.